a topic that so many families eventually face.
Tell them it's better to go now while you still qualify, because what if there is an emergency? But at least in an assisted living, there's 24-hour people there. They have a button they can press whenever they say, oh, my mom will never go to anything, my dad will never go anything. You think that, but then within 2 months they'll be the queen of the assisted living.
My only regret is that I didn't do it sooner.
We've all been there, feeling stuck in the grind, chasing that freedom we're aching to find. But what if the answer was...
Welcome everyone to Big Bold Moves Abundant Life. I am your host, Lisa Marie Heinz, and today we're talking about a topic that so many families eventually face, whether it be today, tomorrow, down the road, and navigating through senior living options is what most people have questions about. Today joining me is Allie Hanson from My Care Finders, and she's going to give us some of the inside and outside of what this industry looks like and help us to navigate what could be a very challenging time. But Allie, what I love for you to do is, as we get started with Big Bold Moves, Abundant Life conversations, is I love to hear what you think and how you define the word abundance.
Abundance. Well, big, I would think, and a wide variety of something, lots of something, covering a lot of space or area. That's what I would think. That's what it would mean to me.
All right, awesome. And we like to ask that question because I feel like so many people define it so differently. And you're right, covering a lot of area, abundance. And I know that this industry that you're in is really intriguing because there are so many things and so many factors that come up into question when you're really unfamiliar with it. So, Allie, tell us a little bit about you and how did you actually get into this industry?
Yeah, so let's see. I've been in lots of different aspects of senior living and senior health care. I did work in a facility for a while in the assisted living. I've done hospice, home health, different aspects of senior living. And then what our company is it's called a placement company, but it's a lot more than just placing a person somewhere. It's a lot more than that. There's a lot of heart and thought and blood, sweat, and tears involved in helping somebody find the right place for them. So what we do is we help people find senior living placement. Maybe their home can't live home anymore and it's just too dangerous for them, or maybe it's a spouse that has memory issues, is wandering and they can't be home, or maybe they're in rehab following a hospitalization, maybe a stroke or something like that, and they need to go directly to an assisted living after the rehab because they're no longer safe at home. So that's typically what we're seeing. Sometimes it's for independent living where folks are completely independent and they're saying, we're ready to be done with this house. We want a simpler life. We want things taken care of. We want to be in a place where we don't have to worry down the line. So, but oftentimes it's more of an emergency where it's like, I need help right now. This isn't working for my mom at home or whoever.
So that's a really great point. And it seems like in any industry and anything that we do, there's always different sides of the story or different factors. So let's focus in and hone in on a specific case, if you will, maybe an
Sure.
example. And that could really open up to somebody who might be listening to find out, okay, this is my situation, my scenario. What do I do? What is my first step to take?
There are so many different scenarios. I'd say the most common scenario is a child looking for their mother or father. But I've even had mothers looking for a child before who had something happen to them. Very commonly, it's a spouse. That's typically the toughest one, I think, because it's really hard for the spouses to go ahead and finally say, it's time, I have to do something, because they took this vow. They didn't ever expect that they'd have to be separated. They feel like it is giving up and they're giving up on that person. And so it's really hard for the spouse. So I always encourage them, keep trying it at home as long as you possibly can until you just really can't. You know, if it's unsafe for somebody, I have one right now, they're very young, they're high 60s, maybe early 70, and she's very progressed in her dementia and she's wandering. She leaves the house. So she has to go to a facility. That's the only option because something really bad could happen to her if she got out and he couldn't find her. And so it's just been very difficult in those types of situations where specifically the spouse is the hardest, I would say, but it's hard for everybody. Of course, children have a hard time too, as well, putting their parent in an assisted living or a memory care. But there's so many different scenarios. And the first step is usually just figuring out getting some sort of help, whether it's help in the home to start or starting your search. I always tell people starting a search early is better because then you know it's out there, you know your options. There's a lot of different types of facilities and people don't know the difference. They don't know the difference between a nursing facility versus an assisted living and for what reason would you need one or the other. So there's just a lot of information and different places out there. So there's a lot to do, but we can help in all of the process and from beginning to end, basically.
Perfect. And I know that just hearing that this will be part of our conversation in a moment, as far as maybe some of the differences between what you just
Yeah.
said,
Hmm.
the different locations, and what's the scenario that the person have to be in order to get them there. But I
Correct.
want to go back just for a moment, and we haven't met before. And I love these conversations when I don't really know the person that I'm speaking with, but I always find that in industries like this, there is a big heart. And I have to imagine that you have a big heart. So
Yeah.
before we even talk about logistics and some of the things that could really, really help somebody listening in, I want you to tell me a little bit about what makes you so passionate about helping these families and maybe some of the examples of things that you've done in your previous careers or throughout your life that got you to where you are today. Did you make any bold
Yeah.
moves?
I was a bartender for a really long time and I fell into senior living. Somebody took a chance on me. I had a baby and I didn't want to work late nights anymore. And I was ready to try and get something more professional. And somebody took a chance on me. And I'm very grateful for that because that's what got my foot in the door with my first job, which was marketing for a hospice company in South Carolina. And hospice is really difficult. People always say, "Oh, how did you do that?" I'm like, "Well, it's tough, but I'm not the nurse who's there with them till the end." You know, I met them in the beginning, explained them the services, signed them up for it, and then talked about this what our services to different doctors and hospitals and things. But it is a very tough industry. Unfortunately, there's loss. That's part of it. But definitely a lot of heart goes into it, which is part of the reason why I chose the company I work for when I did leave the assisted living to go work for my care finders, because our company owner she's just a beautiful, beautiful inside and out person, compassionate, kind, loving. Started this for the right reasons to find the right place for people and to help families. So that was a big part as to why I chose to work for this company. It's because of her. She's wonderful. And yeah, just doing it for so long, there's a lot of tough moments, but people are very grateful for our help. And that makes it all worth it. Just having one text or email or call from somebody saying, "I couldn't have done this without you," it's everything.
That's a
So
great testimony for sure.
yeah.
Those are the quiet moments that happen in the background that they say that you work really hard, and then for somebody to recognize you, it makes it worth
Yeah,
going down that path for
for
sure.
sure.
So I know that you alluded to this a moment ago about how much emotion is surrounding this topic. But when families usually reach out to you and they're feeling that high intensity of the emotion of taking those steps, what is the first step that you take in order to ease their mind, bring them some of the suggestions and the information that you can to help them get from an emotional point to thinking a little bit more logically in what I can only
Yeah.
imagine is just really intense?
Absolutely. There's been so many different situations, but I like to try and get as much information about their loved one, what's going on with them, their age, their diagnosis, what's happening. Sometimes things can be an acute problem that they might be acting out because of an infection. Sometimes they are having some crazy behaviors, but it could be an acute thing that can get fixed with some antibiotics or hospitalization or some therapy or something, and then they can go back to hopefully their baseline. But sometimes it can't if it's something like dementia that it really just is progressing. So you got to learn what's going on with the person to see how best you can help. And then I try and give them as many options as I can as far as if you want to stay home, here are some great companies that can help you at home. How about, have you visited different specialists? What kind of doctors are they seeing? And then, or if it is a facility route, what kind of facility we're looking at? What is your budget? All these different things. And I try and give them as many different options as possible and as many referrals as possible for different things as well. They may need an elder care attorney. They may need home health options. They may need in-house visit doctors that come, mobile doctors, things like there's so many different aspects to this that they could need referrals for. So, and we've got all of that. So I got a lot of information, a lot of great people I can connect them to. If I'm not necessarily the one, there's always others I can connect them with as well. So it's really like digging in and finding out what is really going on with the person. And if it's something that a child that's saying, I've been trying to get my mom in assisted living for the last few years, it's finally time we're doing it. Then I'm like, okay, I know that's what we're doing. We're going this route. But sometimes, like I said, if it's an infection or something, maybe they're just acting out. Maybe they can still stay home if they get some medication or something. So you got to really figure out what's going on with the person and how you can help them best.
And I feel like you said it just a second ago too, and it's not a one size fits all. It's very, very individual based on the
Mhm.
information that you're gathering.
Right.
And when you go ahead and you become part of the situation and part of the scenario, and here we are, Allie, she's going to help us through this transition. You have all the resources. And I honestly, until I met you, I didn't even know that there was a person like you that
Yeah.
could help
It's a
navigate.
relatively newer thing. We're actually probably the longest running family owned, though the big conglomerate is a place for mom. But we're different in that we're local. Same business model. We find out what the person needs, send them some referrals for options for facilities. But since we're local, we know the places very, very well, the people, the licensing, the costs, who takes Medicaid, who doesn't, all these different little factors. And then we also schedule the tours and go with them with the families, whereas some of the bigger online companies may not do that kind of thing. So they're the ones that started it, but we're the longest running company in the area. That's family owned company. That's not a franchise, not a big conglomerate. So we're about to have our 8th year. So it's a newer thing in the industry, I'd say.
And I think that's great because you say initially emotional, the emotional part of it. There's denial in there too. So many
Oh,
people have the denial. Oh, I don't need to go there yet.
they
But
all say that.
as
Trust me. None of them are kicking their heels to go to assisted living. Yeah.
it just seems like, oh my gosh, am I at that point in my life right now? I know personally that my parents are getting older right now, and there's some experience of situations happening, and we can talk about that in another time. But it is as busy, busy, busy people, this seems like such a bump in the road, but it is so necessary, especially as you mentioned, to do it while you can, while you're in your right
Yeah.
mind to
And a
make
lot of
these
times these children
decisions.
are working. The kids of these loved ones, they're like 50, 60. They still work. And they're like, oh my God, how am I going to do all this? I'm like, I got you. I'm going to do all the legwork. I'm going to schedule all the tours. You give me some dates and we're going. This is what, you know what I mean? So that's a relief to them too, because they're like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to research this? Because Googling is not the answer with this, because it'll give you all kinds of different places and nursing facilities. It's just a big mix. You need to really figure out which one you need and which direction you need to go.
So I guess my logistic question is, and I imagine other people would have this question too. So when you look at a service that can help you with such a road to travel, what are some of the fees that are associated with actually what you do? Or is there a place where you're getting a compensation for the referral to a
Yeah.
particular location?
Yes. So we're a completely free service to the customer, the client. There's no fees that we'd ever charge them. So yes, we have, luckily, since we've been around a really long time, we have contracts or agreements with, I'd say, like 95% of the facilities from Tampa to Naples, basically everyone, with a few really high dollar places that have long wait lists that are an exception. But for the most part, we have contracts with pretty much everybody. So I'm not going to pick and choose, oh, I won't talk about this place because we don't have a contract with them. We pretty much have contracts with everybody. So I can really be fair as far as who I can show and where I'll show the people. But yes, the facility pays us. But then all the other stuff that we do is just a free thing. If somebody's calling, I need recommendations for Medicaid planners, elder care attorneys, home health, all this other stuff, movers. I'm just giving them the information. That's just to help people, obviously. Because I get a lot of calls of just random questions. I'm like, I got you. I've got an answer for you. So that kind of stuff we just do for free, of course.
That's amazing. And I've got some background in some of the facilities in the community. And I do know that there are so many services available to a potential client, or like you mentioned, if there's even services that could come to your home that are
Mhm.
typically covered under many different umbrellas of insurance and bonuses and benefits from people who've lived and served in the service and things like that. But going before we have that conversation, tell me what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people may have when it comes to senior living communities?
I'd say the biggest one is, especially this is with seniors, not maybe you or I, because we understand it more, but somebody in their 80s, high 70s, 80s, 90s, they think everything is a nursing home. because assisted living is a relatively new thing as well. I think it started 40 years ago or something. People in their 80s and 90s who watched their aunts or their grandmothers or their moms even be in a facility was a nursing home, a home. They was called a home. Don't send me to a home. They don't realize that when you go to an assisted living, it's not like a hospital. It's not a nursing facility that's like a step down from a hospital with that sterile hospital feeling, the curtain going across the room, people yelling in the hallways. It's assisted living's not like that. It's more of a home-like environment, or like some of them you feel like you're in a hotel or a condo when you walk in. It's more home-like, more comfortable, more relaxed, less restrictive. So sometimes I'm like, if we can at least just get them to see it, they'll see, oh wow, this is not so bad. Because they still have this mindset of it's a nursing home, it's a nursing home. Whereas it's just really not. Yes, those still exist, of course, too, but there are other types of communities that are different. So that's the biggest misconception. The second one would probably be that it's a covered thing. Unfortunately, it's not. Assisted living is not covered by any Medicare or private insurance. So it's typically private pay. There are a few other ways to pay as well, but that's a hurdle for sure.
And I know recently I had an aunt that moved to town and we got her set up in a really great independent living.
Yeah, you told me about that's a good one.
Yeah, so we had her all set up there, and I was like, wow, my husband and I, we go to dinner there often. The chef
It's so
is
good. It's
spectacular.
I love that place. Yeah.
Oh
That's
my
a nice
gosh.
place.
And I told my aunt, I said, Auntie, since you've moved here since October, I must have gained 20 pounds. So I'm like, oh my goodness.
Usually they gain weight when they go to these places, which is good because a lot of times if they're on their own, if it's one person, they're not really cooking anymore. They're eating TV dinners. Finally, they're getting real meals again. So that's a big
Right.
reason to move right there is the folks that are kind of not really cooking anymore. What are you eating? You go in their fridge, there's either nothing there or everything's really old. So that's one of the big reasons is the meals.
Yeah. And it's funny too because my husband, we're in our 60s and we go there. I'm like, oh, this is very inviting. We sell
Mhm.
the house. All of the fees that you pay for the house, everything is included. And even
Yeah.
though it might be a little bit more expensive when you look at the number, when you break it
Mhm.
down, it's kind of a deal, really. I
It
mean, yes,
is.
you don't have all the overhead, you don't have the space that you would at your own home, but oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
very appealing. Very
It really is. I
appealing.
actually have a price comparison sheet that I give people sometimes. I had a gentleman move into an independent living facility and he couldn't get over the sticker number, which wasn't too bad. In their minds, they can't understand it. And when his son was like, will you send me that price comparison sheet you told me about? I was like, sure. They went down the list. When they started adding up everything, his dad was paying the HOA. He had a big home in Lakewood Ranch. So he had CDD, he had HOA, he had a pool guy, he had a yard guy, all the things. He was paying $500 more a month at home than he was going to be paying at the independent living. So
It
sometimes it
is.
works out to be less.
Yeah, it's sticker shock for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to do dishes. Oh my gosh, you show up, you eat, you leave.
Yeah. I know.
It's
That's the
amazing.
best part.
Yeah, and they even clean the apartments too
Yes, they do.
as
They
part of
do.
that deal. Okay, so moving on, and we talk about independent living, you just alluded to it a little bit, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, and there is a term that's called aging in place. Do you
Mhm.
want to talk about that for a minute just to give some
Sure.
clarification?
Aging in place can be a lot of different things, but typically it's going to be a community. We don't like the F word for, I still say it sometimes, but facility, that's a bad word. But technically they're facilities, but they don't like to be called that. But the communities, typically if they have more than just one level of care, one setting, it's going to be aging in place. Although you really can age in place anywhere if you bring in care, if you need more help or those kind of things. But typically it's going to be a place that has like assisted living and memory care, maybe a skilled nursing as well. So then they can stay there the rest of their life and not have to move again. Now, in a place that's just an independent living, you still can age in places there as well because they typically have like your aunt's place, they have a third party home health and a third party home care service on site, doctors that come in. So people can stay there and age in place as time goes on and they start needing assistance. Sometimes they might still need to move out, hopefully not, but it does happen that they might just need more than they can afford with the home care coming in an independent living. So there's different scenarios, but aging in place would be being able to stay at the facility and not having to move to another facility, basically.
Okay, and then when people do work with you, I know you have all the questions. You know it from being in the industry for so long, but what would be some of the typical questions that somebody might forget to ask during this process?
Oh, lots of different ones. Of course, price is one they always ask, but something that they might forget to ask would be, this is why I need to sometimes dig in with a little bit more medical questions. Just for example, if the person's a diabetic and they have insulin and they can't do it themselves, that eliminates a lot of places because there's certain regulations that say only a nurse, an LPN, has to be an LPN, can give an injection. Well, assisted living doesn't require a nurse to be there. I think they have to be available 24/7 by phone, but they don't have to be on site. So if somebody has 4 shots a day, there's sometimes one in the morning, 3 to 4 shots a day if they're a sliding scale. That might be morning, afternoon, and evening. If it's a place that has a nurse Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, who's going to do the shots on the weekends, or if they need one at 7 after dinner, something like that. So that's one of those things we have to take into consideration. It's got to be a facility that has a nurse at least 7 to 7 every day, because some of them it's not required. They might not have that. So things like that people don't realize. You got to ask. That's why you got to dig in and ask things like that. Like, are they diabetic? Oxygen. There's certain regulations with oxygen, all kinds of different things. So sometimes they don't realize that. Price is normally their first question. Location, I think, is really important. If it's 30 minutes away, how often are you going to see your loved one? Let's try and stay maybe within 10 to 15 minutes if possible. But sometimes there's maybe one kid in Tampa and one kid in Venice. They want to be in the middle. So there's so many different options with location as well. I'd say things people forget to ask would be just the random little details that are particular to each person.
It does go deep because one question will happen and then more questions will come up from that
Mhm.
one question. But I think
Yeah.
you explained it very well. And seniors themselves, we talk about do it while you can, do it while you're thinking about what it is that you want. But when you're moving from having all of your all, let's face it, we accumulate a lot of stuff that goes into our
Oh yeah,
lives,
that's
you
a big
know,
one.
what are some of the things that you could help with in facilitating? Okay, I've got this big house, my kids live out of state, like you mentioned earlier, they're working. How can I go from eliminating or donating or doing the things that I need to do to then transition into a new place once I've made that decision? This episode is brought to you by Fearlessly Debt Free. Do you have great income, but the debt just doesn't seem to be going down fast enough? Just know that you are not alone. At Fearlessly Debt Free, I help people just like you pay everything off: credit cards, loans, even mortgages, in half to a third of the time, for half to a third of what you owe. And no, this isn't budgeting, it's not debt consolidation or bankruptcy. It's math, it's strategy, and it's automatic. And it works. How would it feel to be completely debt free and to start building incredible wealth much, much faster? Schedule your free Debt to Wealth discovery call today at fearlessly.free.com and take your next steps fearlessly.
So there are a lot of fabulous companies that we recommend in the area that are movers. If it's just one guy going to a small apartment in assisted living and he's got his chair and his bed and his dresser and an end table and a TV, I'm just going to be like, let's do the cheapest route. Let's get the cheapest mover. I've got a bunch of those I can recommend just to move a few things. But if it's a couple moving to independent living from, say, a 4-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom, that's a lot more involved. They need somebody to come in and help figure out what's coming. Here's the floor plan where they're moving, what can fit, who's going to measure this, who's going to help them downsize, who's going to take this. So there are some really great, they're called senior move manager companies that are movers, but they have this extra layer of they'll come in and really do the downsizing. They'll donate things. Some of them even will help do estate sales if there's pricey items that could be sold. And they're just fabulous. They'll come in and do all the things. They'll even pack it, wrap it, so you don't have to lift a finger. And then they set the whole apartment up planned out. They've have all planned out so that everybody knows what it's going to look like. And then the new resident walks in and they're like, oh, wow, look at this beautiful. It's all set up and everything ready for them to go. So you don't have to unpack anything. The clothes are hung, the pictures are on the walls, everything's set. So it's all ready for them. So those are a great help and for a couple or somebody who's coming from a big house who needs to downsize. These companies are amazing. They do amazing work. I
And I
refer out
can
for that. There's no way I could do that stuff.
I know just in my own personal situation, I moved my aunt from Hawaii here. She
Oh
was
my
here.
God.
She
Oh,
basically locked her door in Hawaii. She had her house, storage unit, and apartment. We had moved her into an assisted living previous to her coming here. So she had 3 locations. Just the coordination of all of that has been, we're still
especially all the
working
way
on it
out there.
now.
Oh my gosh. That's hard.
Yeah.
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 My aunt's coming
Which,
from California, or my godmother, I call her my aunt, but she's coming soon, very soon. It's taken 4 years. Basically, when I first started with my care finders, we started touring when she would come visit. And she's always like, no, 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 she doesn't have anybody. It's us. That's it. So we finally convinced her. So she's coming to an independent living in a couple weeks. But it's been tough with the whole California thing.
yes, totally relate to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really a good point to talk about because for our case, my aunt was living in Hawaii by herself. She had her friends, she's in her late
Mhm.
80s, but are they going to be there for her when she has a need? And there were some needs that were popping up. And we talk about red flags, and maybe
Mhm.
some families are looking at things like, oh my gosh, they left the water running, or you forgot what day it was.
Oh,
And those
yeah.
may seem insignificant, but if there's nobody there to pick up on some of those signs, we want our loved ones to be cared for, like you said. And if
Mhm.
they're navigating this crazy life, which it's crazy for me, and I think I'm doing okay, but to navigate all of those things when you should be enjoying your life. Look at your aunt in California, look at my aunt in
Mhm.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
Let's speak to the people who may know a neighbor who's alone or may know somebody in their community. How could somebody that is just seeing an issue bring this attention to maybe yourself to maybe get that person some help? Is that
Well,
something that you find is
I do, because a lot of times I'll do a lot of like vendor fairs or presentations at mobile home communities or different places where it's 55 plus, and they always say, oh, it's not for me. It's not for me. I don't need that yet. I don't need that yet. I'm like, I know. I'm not saying you do, but what about your neighbor next door? A lot of times that's what will happen, especially at these mobile home parks, because some of them are snowbirds who are in their late 60s. They just got their mobile home. They still go back and forth, but their neighbor may be 99 who's been in that mobile home park for 30 years. So yes, that's a huge concern. And that's why I always tell them, I'm like, I know I'm not trying to say that you need to go to senior living, but maybe you should keep your eyes out for some neighbors and be happy to help them. But again, there's that stubborn part, like you talk about the denial thing. So sometimes that's the hard part, but all we can do is try to help.
so I wonder if you hear this as well, and you've got the person who's like, oh no, not for me, not for me. Well, that's an understandable response because it is
Right.
such a big move. And in many cases, you look at it as like, okay, I'm at the top of the totem pole now. This decision really takes me to that next level. But I also know too that being in this community where my aunt lives, and then I've worked in a few of them in my other career with as a fitness instructor, and I've gone in there and done fitness and
Oh,
activities with a
cool.
lot of the seniors, and it is so much fun. But to see them in this space, I have asked so many people, how long have you lived here? And what do you love most? And a lot of times they will say, my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk with that for a moment because maybe there is somebody listening who might be younger, who has an elder that might be coming into that conversation of maybe taking that step. What are some of the things that they could do to entice them to think about this as an option for them?
Yeah, that's such a great point because it's very common. They say they're not ready yet, or it's not for me. I don't need this. And they're a lot of times are in denial. It often just takes a hard conversation where sometimes they have to sit them down and be like, I can't keep coming here to, if it's more in an assisted living situation, when it's independent, that's really on their, I feel like they're making that decision on their own. Whereas when it's assisted and they're resistant to it, it's typically some sort of loved one who's pushing it, like, we need to do this. And it often comes with a lot of pushback. I usually tell them because it's very common. They're like, what do I do? They're going to fight me on this tooth and nail. They're going to say they're not going. I'm like, there's lots of different ways to approach it. One of the things I always tell people that could give them some peace of mind is that assisted living in this state is a 30-day notice. So, say they are fortunate to be able to still have their apartment or home for at least a little while. Some people can't. Some people have to get rid of that right away in order to pay for assisted living. But say they are fortunate to be able to have both. So, give them the peace of mind that, hey, it's a 30-day notice. You hate it. It doesn't work out. It's the worst place ever for you. Give it a couple months, give it a 30-day notice, and you go home. So that's one way that I always tell people that may help them try to think that it's not so terrible. We're just having the hard conversation of, I can't keep leaving work because there's an emergency at your house because you fell, or calling every day to make sure you're taking your medications. I can't do those things as an adult child of yours. So we really need to take the next step, and getting them to at least just see the places and visit. That sometimes they'll be like, oh, this really isn't so bad once they see it, that it's not a home. So sometimes that helps as well. And unfortunately, a lot of times people just wait until they just keep waiting, and then something terrible happens, which is very common, like another fall or a stroke. And then now the person may not qualify for assisted living. Now they might have to go to a skilled nursing facility or a nursing home. So sometimes I tell people, if they're trying to use their bargaining chips, I'll say to them, tell them it's better to go now while you still qualify. Because what if there is an emergency? Then we don't want you in a nursing home. Let's get you in this better living situation before an emergency. Not to say that they couldn't fall or have a stroke or something like that in assisted living. Of course, that could happen as well, and they could still end up in a nursing facility. But at least in an assisted living, there's 24-hour people there. They have a button they can press. There's hospitals nearby. There's transportation. They're not going to be on the floor for a couple days. I had a guy on a floor for 4 days one time. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, but it's hard. It's never easy. I think I've had maybe 2 clients ever who were like excited to go to a place and we're ready to go, and woo, I can't wait. Everybody else is like, I'm not ever going there. You will have to drag me. So that's the hard part.
So, do you think back on your career being there specifically for 8 years that there was one or two stories that you could think of where maybe the family was looking into the situation? The scenario was it's time and peace of mind. That's amazing. And thriving. That's amazing because I do see that people thrive when they come into a place where they're healthier now because they're eating right, getting their medications right. There's
Yes.
people around, there's community. We're not meant to live alone or be alone,
Right.
especially in those difficult times of there's a lot to keep up with a home or an apartment on your own.
I love that your aunt is in a place, because I feel like that kind of connected you, like, oh, this is interesting, because you get it, because you did it, and it's hard.
Oh, it is. Oh my
Hard.
gosh.
Yeah.
But it's great. She's thriving.
Oh, I
And
love
we can even talk about that for a moment too. Because she lives in a place where they have services, the therapy that she gets 3 types of therapy each and
it.
every week, and probably 3 times a week. So that's 9 visits for her to go and get speech therapy, and they help with memory, cognitive, which is amazing. She gets occupational therapy. She's got a bad shoulder. So they're
Mhm.
helping her with the ability to do more things to help her with the daily tasks. And then she has physical therapy and she's got a bad back. And she tells me, oh my gosh, Lisa, they had me bent around like a pretzel. And so people now see her standing up taller and walking with so much more ability than they did when she first got there. So I want to say that some of these places are a blessing because she would never, ever be able to get those types of services anywhere else, especially
Yeah.
as she's in Hawaii by herself or lonesome. And if
Oh
she
my
would own
gosh. And
their
trying
own
to figure
home,
that out when you're, yeah, when you're eight, like
oh,
just trying to figure out who to call, how to do this when you're 80s. Because sometimes I'm working directly with the client, and if they're in their 80s, they don't have email. Sometimes they don't, they don't know how to look up stuff. So I'm like, let
right.
me let me do this for you.
That's it. So, Allie, we need you. We need you in this industry so much. So,
Oh,
thank you
thank
for
you.
doing all that you're doing. So, tell me a story or two, maybe a client or two that you've seen
Yeah.
such great peace of mind because of the
Yes.
transformation and the
I can
transition.
think of one exactly. And I think I had her for, it took 2 years to finally get her to move her. But the daughters were, it was like they were scared of her. They didn't want to upset her because they knew this was going to upset her. She was never going to go. And she was borderline needing a nursing facility. I'm like, if you don't get her in now, she's going to be in a nursing facility, because she was needing a lot of help. And they always talked about, oh, she's so antisocial. Even as kids, we weren't allowed to have friends over because she didn't want to see anybody because she's very scared of people and all this. She's not going to do any activities. She won't even come out for meals. I'm like, well, she's going to have to come out for meals unless she wants to pay for it, because they'll charge you at the facility if you don't come out for the meals. But the reason for that is to get you to come out, because they want you to come out and socialize. She doesn't have to go to activities, but she will have to probably go out. She can sit at a table by herself. And that's okay. And they were just so gung ho, she'll never do anything. I remember checking in with the sales lady, like, how's she doing after 2 months? She's playing bingo. She was going to things, and these daughters couldn't believe. And at first, they were almost trying to be like, "Don't encourage her to do it." And they were like, "Why? She's wanting to. Let's let her." And then finally, I think they were just so scared, still scared of her in some strange way. And so finally, they let up, and they were like, yeah, this is good for her. And she was going to activities, going to meals, and she became this person that they never thought she was. I always tell people, and whenever they say, oh, my mom will never go to anything, my dad will never go to anything, they're not social. You think that, but then within 2 months, they'll be the queen of the assisted living, so you just never know. But that, I always remember that one lady, because they were just so adamant that she was the most antisocial, scared of people, all this. And then within a couple of months, she was doing it. She was doing all the things.
Yeah, we call them the mayor. My aunt's like the
Yeah.
mayor.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
directing people and you sit there and you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's
It's
so
like
great.
it's almost like bringing you back to those high school and middle school
Yeah.
days.
And that's part of
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's very scary for them when they first go. Imagine it's like the new kid at school again. So it's hard at first, but all these places are really great about, they've got ambassadors and they've got activities, people come up to knock on the door, and they really do a great job getting people to feel connected to the place. And
I can speak only for where my aunt lives right now because I've been there the most recently. And it does say that they're an independent living. They are a lifestyle living. There are senior activities going on all the time. And even though it's independent, I think one of the misconceptions that I had was, oh, they're on their own completely. But no, that's not the case.
Mhm.
They are like a family. And I feel as an extended family for a working woman, and you mentioned earlier about kids are working, adult children are working, it's
Mhm.
so much peace of mind and peace of heart to know that your senior family member isn't, like you said, falling on the floor and nobody's
Right.
finding them. They
Yeah.
have the button to push, or the person that comes up and checks on you if you haven't shown up for a few
Yeah.
meals. They really get to know your
They
schedule.
get to know the people. Yep. It's like a
Yeah.
family. Yeah. They really get to know them. And we know if they're acting off or something's going on, they'll make a call, say, she's not feeling good. Something's going on. Can we get a doctor's visit? Or I have one specific place that I always joke with the salespeople every time I come. I'm like, you got my room ready? Because I'm like, I'm ready. I will move there tomorrow if you let me.
I think that transitions over into the next generation. And so now the generations that we typically talk about with your industry are, for the most part, those 70s, 80s, that type of thing. But next
Mhm.
generation, I feel like same thing. Oh my goodness, I'm exposed to this. This looks like a really great option. There are many places that are popping up now, and we're in Florida here, so there's a lot of facilities available.
Mhm.
And some are, go ahead and check them out. Find out what appeals to you.
Yeah,
Granted, situations can change, but isn't it great that you can put your name on a list or just having it
absolutely.
wait there for a year, 2 years, three
Oh,
years,
yeah.
however long you want?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of them, I know this one place we always joke about. We had a lady on the wait list for 2 years before she finally moved in. They just kept coming down to her. You ready? No. Okay. And then they'd go on to the next person, but keep her there. You ready? No. Okay. And so they just kept her on the wait list and then would move down to the next person until she was finally ready.
And
They're
that's
great. They're
okay.
really great places. Yeah.
Yeah. One other question that I'll ask you before we move on to our close here is some places are, of course, we have independent, like we just said, and assisted and even nursing homes, but some places when it comes to independent, there are buy-ins and then there
Mhm.
are some that are month to month. And I
Yeah.
think
Good
that's
question.
something that you probably explain to your clients when you
I
speak with
do.
them.
I
But
do.
would you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, exactly. So buy-in is, sometimes there's lots of different terms for that. It could be called an entry fee community. We call it a buy-in community or life care community, typically are the ways people describe it. And then you have your month-to-month rental communities, which is just like an apartment complex. They want their rent on the first or the fifth, and you're late if you don't send it there, right? So an entry fee community is where you're putting a big, big, huge chunk of money down, and then but you still have a monthly fee. But how I describe to people is it's almost like a life insurance policy in a way, because that big chunk of money you're putting down is guaranteeing you care for life. So if you were to run out of money at no fault of your own, if you went into Vegas and gambled $100,000, you might lose your contract. Or if you bought your son a Corvette, you might lose your contract, right? But if at no fault of your own you run out of money, you can live there in any of the level of care that you need, whether it's assisted, memory, nursing facility, even if you run out of money. So I actually worked at one of those places, and we did in fact have people sometimes on what's called care for life, meaning they're basically out of money and we were taking care of them, and it would take their social security and they would be in whatever setting they needed to be in. So at any given time, there would be 5, 10, 12 residents on campus who were on care for life. So that's what that big entry fee is for. It's like an insurance policy. But what I always tell people is you want to be young and healthy if you're going to do that. I don't recommend doing that if you're already having some problems or issues. The place I worked at, they don't want any diagnoses of certain things because that's to protect the person. If you already have a diagnosis of dementia or cancer, it might not be a good fit for you to put a big, huge chunk of money down because you might lose a lot of that money if, God forbid, you're not with us very long. So that's to protect them, that they don't want to take people with certain diagnoses, or they don't want to do the buy-in for people with certain diagnoses because it's not a good bang for their buck, basically. So I normally recommend it for maybe people who are younger, in their early 70s, late 70s, maybe even early 80s, healthy, don't have a lot of issues. That could be a good fit for them. People who don't have kids, or kids who aren't involved or far away and they don't want to be a bother to them. Great program for those kind of people, because this place, they are going to be there until the end and they will have a place there. So that's the big difference. And then a month-to-month rental is you can get out of it. So there's pros and cons to both. It's a lot less money at a month-to-month rental. Usually a month-to-month rental, the month-to-month fee might be a little bit more than the monthly fee at a entry fee community. After many years, it may even out. I still think in the long run, month-to-month is probably cheaper. But it's just different strokes for different folks, I guess. There's definitely pros and cons to both, I think.
And that is why people need you. And with your permission, I'm just going to go ahead and encourage people to talk with you because you know all of that stuff. But
Yes,
doing some research, doing some research for My Care Finders, these are some of the things that really stand out. Of course, it's family owned and operated. It's got concierge style support. And you mentioned that's as a bonus to the person that's working with you. That's something that's free, and you can provide all of those bits of information that they might not know to ask for themselves. There's emotional guidance, and it's not just a placement. It is something that allows you to be the advocate during a tour, so you can ask the questions that they may not be thinking about. Strong focus is on reducing the stress and the confusion of this whole industry and taking these steps. And then there's a deep experience for assisted living administration and senior care. And you know all of that information that you can certainly share with others. And then you emphasize on dignity, empathy, and doing everything with your heart. So did I get that right?
Absolutely.
Allie, we're going to be closing in just a moment. Please tell everybody how they can connect with you and how they can reach out and for you to answer any questions that they have.
Yes, I am one of those people that have my phone with me all the time. I answer it on weekends. Texting is always great, emailing, calls. I like to go to different vendor fairs and healthcare things and 55 plus neighborhoods. I do talks at different places, all kinds of places. I'm all over the place. My number and email would be the easiest way to reach me.
Allie, thank you so much for being here today
Thank
and for
you.
sharing your heart and your knowledge in what could
Thank you
only
so much.
be just a challenging place in this life when it comes to these times. But My Care Finders is Allie, and Allie is available to help you in any capacity that she can.
Yes,
And
thank
again,
you.
we will leave her information in the show notes below. And I just appreciate your time,
I
your
appreciate
heart,
you.
and
Thank you.
this was a great conversation. Allie, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your compassion, and your heart with us today. Conversations like this remind us that asking for guidance isn't a sign of weakness. It's one of the greatest gifts that we can give the people that we love. And if today's conversation encouraged you, or if someone immediately came to mind while you were listening, I hope you'll share this episode with them. You never know when the right information at the right time can make all the difference for a family walking through such an emotional season. As always, thank you for being part of Big Bold Moves Abundant Life community. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and join us next time as we continue to share stories, resources, and conversations that inspire you to live with purpose, possibility, and abundance. Until next time, keep making those big, bold moves towards your abundant life.
Big bold moves, abundant life. Fearlessly debt free, we're